Hello, this is Jake. Or is it?
Oh, man, Jake, you're so funny. Anyway, it's Greg. I just wanted to know what you're up to this weekend, when we can record the podcast.
Well, this weekend, Greg, I will be doing a number of things, and I will get to those things once we get to the weekend.
Yeah. It's just that you and I usually record the podcast on the weekend. I just wanted to know if you had any plans, how we can work around that.
Well, Greg, the weekend is not currently upon us, and we are focusing on jobs and making sure that families are fed.
Yeah. Well, it's not really the direction of the podcast, but I mean, what I want to know is, I know a lot of things are cancelled or postponed, but you can still do other things like take the family for a walk or something like that.
Well, Greg, we have a plan, and we will announce that plan when it is the right time to announce that plan. And I would say, Greg, and this is very important, the role of me is not to announce plans. It is to ensure that the people of Australia that live within my house know that we are doing what is needed and when it needs to be done.
Oh, man. I think you should head to one of those drive-through testing centers, because I know you've been hanging out with Peter and it sounds like that coronavirus may have mutated.
People who hoard stuff should be locked up on Christmas Island.
I think we should practice social distancing. Hello and welcome to The Pouch, the straight boomerang of podcasts that helps the average Aussie try and make sense of their current political environment. I'm Greg O'Good, another news alert on my watch, savage.
And I'm Jake. I was social distancing before it was cool far Wharton. On today's episode, we talk hungry Hungarians, projecting for projects and budgeting for budgets.
And Jake, while we're on the topic of alliteration, I want to know about Jaquie Lambie and why her website lambienetwork.com.au is the best gosh darn website in the world.
Watch the language, Greg. I mean, spoiler alert, it's not.
All right, Jake. Here we are. We're not in quarantine. I can't say that I'm in quarantine. I'm certainly practicing social distancing. How's your social distancing going?
Well, I'm currently standing 4 meters away from my microphone, which is not conducive to good audio quality. But it is what the government has decreed, because, of course, I do value my microphone, as I am a heavy user of a microphone.
G-rated show.
No, I'm just saying I value it as a person. It is a person, therefore I will distance myself from it. No, I'm fine.
Well, corporations are people, aren't they?
Corporations
so we should be distancing
people.
Ourselves from corporations.
Absolutely.
And they need to distance themselves from each other. That you can no longer have a KFC next to a McDonald's.
That's a great idea. But I do feel that there have been a lot of corporations over the last week distancing themselves from their employees, so to speak.
Yeah. I suppose we have been social distancing from away from corporations over the last few weeks, haven't we?
Yes, indeed.
Jake, we just got off the phone to
the
mayor of the Blue Mountains, not the mayor, full stop, the mayor of the Blue Mountains.
Oh, look, I'm okay with just referring to him as the mayor of everywhere. He's the everywhere mayor.
He was such a great bloke that I wouldn't be surprised if our listeners also vote him in as the mayor of everywhere.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened there and what can we expect from a release from the pouch this week?
Yes, well, we did discuss with the mayor of the Blue Mountains, Mark, that we went through the emergence of the bushfires last year and into the start of 2020, also the bushfires back in 2013, and how he as a mayor, as a local councillor, how he manages that situation and sort of what the role is of a mayor in the emerging pandemic. So it was a very interesting chat. I won't go too much into it because obviously we'll spoil people's dinner by way of podcast.
breakfast. But look, you can't sit around a dinner table at the moment anyway. So
true.
what's the point?
Exactly.
What's the point? Everyone's just going to have their headphones on like a teenage daughter. Now, again, sounds edgy, but not really. So yeah, we did interview the mayor. We'll release that. The mayor of the Blue Mountains will release that this week.
I think we're down with the mayor of everywhere.
All right. Well, let's get to this week's stories. We have had some news stories which are relevant to politics still. The federal court finds that J. Fry, otherwise known as the Big Josh or Josh Frydenberg, Josh Frydenberg, is not Hungarian. He's just hungry. Talk us through it.
Yes. So it looked an interesting case. It's one that we discussed a little bit on a previous episode. So it's a bit of an update, really. But Michael Standy, the climate activist who crowdfunded a legal challenge to have the citizenship of the federal treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, tested as essentially testing his eligibility to sit as a parliamentarian under Section 44 of the Constitution, which we have also discussed in a previous episode. We had
a whole episode dedicated to Section 44 of the Constitution. Yeah, we're moving it through each section.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty certain that there is no. So Section 44 is actually the final section of the Constitution. So we're done.
Yeah. Well, we're working backwards so that when you go onto the podcast, it's in the right order.
Good. Yeah. So my favourite section is actually Section 7.
Ah, that is a good section.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's been cancelled.
It's been cancelled. Yeah, just it's the one that talks about social distancing. But yeah. So the reason for this legal challenge is essentially Josh Frydenberg's mother, Erica, was a Hungarian citizen, was born in Hungary along with the rest of her family, and migrated to Australia due to the rise of communism and indeed Nazism in 1943 after being born in Budapest. So she moved to Australia when she was 6, and when she arrived, the travel documents were issued to her based on essentially her statelessness. Because she was among many other people that were fleeing essentially the Holocaust. So, fast forward to today, and this legal challenge has been thrown out. And essentially, the eligibility of Josh Frydenberg has been shown to be perfectly fine. Essentially,
Excellent.
They found that the mother renounced their Hungarian citizenship when they were recognised as stateless, and certainly when they docked, by the time that they docked at Western Australia. And in fact, there was a letter from the Hungarian. I'm not certain whether it was the Hungarian ministry or just the country of Hungary. I think the country of Hungary sent a letter to Josh Frydenberg.
Just some primary school students.
Yeah.
As a project.
Exactly. So they essentially his citizenship, or rather his lack of citizenship, has been proven by Hungary. So there's really no question now to his eligibility. So he is perfectly fine to continue serving as a parliamentarian.
I'm sure everyone is happy with that.
Well, given that we are in fairly testy times at the moment, when it's pretty necessary to have a fair amount of very strong leadership within the Treasury Office. It's probably important that we maintain as much continuity as we possibly can in that department, because stimulus measures are going to be required, and the Australian people really need someone that they can look to ensure that we are making measured decisions about what goes in and what goes out of the next stimulus package.
Absolutely. So, speaking of stimulus and Josh Frydenberg, everything's changing day to day. So, we're just going to comment on our commentary in this episode is just about what's what's happening up till now. Yep. By the time this gets released in 5 or 6 hours,
everything's changed. Yeah, everybody's getting $1 million each.
Yep, that's right. Jake's shout. Now, but at this stage, we learnt yesterday that that there were some changes to the budget. So
Yes.
Tell us about what Scott Morrison has announced yesterday as part of the budgeting changes.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Scott Morrison yesterday announced that the federal government will delay its budget until October 6, 5 months later than usual, essentially as it considers the economic damage of the coronavirus. And really,
I'm also delaying my budget.
my household budget. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm delaying budgeting until I don't know, December.
Actually, that's a really good point. Maybe collectively we should each call our electricity companies and say, look, due to the emergence of the coronavirus, I am delaying paying this bill until October 6. I refer you to the federal government's
That's right.
deferring their federal budget and acknowledge that if they're doing it, so can we. Okay? It's
That's
all
right.
about
What's
parity.
good for the goose is good for the gooses.
Yeah, geese.
I know what it is. I
love it. So it's interesting because it really acknowledges the fact that over the next few months, there is very little reason to put pen to paper and to say exactly what we're intending to do, further on over the next sort of 12-month period.
There's a lot of minuses on that sheet, isn't there?
Exactly, particularly at the moment.
There's a lot of this, like minus, 7 million for this, minus 8 million for that,
minus 20 billion for that,
minus lost tax.
Exactly, and that's sort of the thing is, a lot of this is sort of flying by the seat of their pants. It's a lot of it is just being reactive to the market conditions. We obviously heard that there were, going to be massive stand downs, which is essentially another word for a sort of a short-term layoff of airline employees by about 2/3 of Qantas's workforce.
Yeah. Huge. Which has been left up by
massive.
Coles, by the way. I read. I think
Coles was asking for about 5,000 people, whereas 20,000 people have been laid off from the airlines.
Yeah. But it was nice of Coles, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Come and work for $12 an hour to stock shelves.
Well, it's better than no dollars per hour, I guess.
No, that's definitely true. That is most certainly true.
I was trying to make it sound nice, and now I just feel
the funniest comment though, and I don't know whether they were saying it tongue in cheek or being entirely genuine because I genuinely don't know how to take this comment.
It's hard to know these days, isn't it? Yeah.
But when Alan Joyce, the CEO for Qantas made the announcement that Coles, the CEO for Coles had reached out to them and said there are a number of these jobs. Alan Joyce said something to the order of, these airline workers will be very well placed to stock the shelves of Coles. And is it a skill set? Is it? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being entirely elitist. There we go.
I think so. Look, everyone's on the front line at the moment, so everything's a skill set. So everyone's on the front line. So we got one stimulus package.
Yes.
And now we're looking forward to everyone's armed and ready for the second stimulus package.
Yes. Well,
I was gonna say lubed and ready, but I didn't.
I'm really glad you didn't.
So then I had to default to armed.
Yeah, very visceral. But so what Morrison has said about this is essentially, quote, the idea that you can put together any sort of forecast about the economy at this time is simply not sensible. So a second stimulus package, as you say, will be forthcoming very shortly. It'll be directed towards small to medium-sized businesses. Aged care centres specifically will also receive an extra $444 million. Part of that is about ensuring that they've got the right skill sets, that they've got extra staff and extra doctors and nurses on staff to be able to care for patients who do contract COVID COVID, and of course to ensure that any COVID presentations don't spread throughout the aged care centres as well. So the incredibly important thing and in fact, I think one of the messages that the federal government put out yesterday was essentially, if you can, essentially, and it was a little bit heartbreaking, but essentially, if you can forego contacting your parents or loved ones in an aged care home, it's probably very important that you do so, and that may last for up to 6 months. And given that the people living in aged care homes, are probably in the last few months or years of their life, it's quite a heartbreaking statement to make, I'm sure.
It really is. It really is. One thing that I think during this whole crisis is realizing that everyone is going to go on their own little journey with this. That
yes.
That everyone's little pains and angsts and frustrations, and on one end of the spectrum and on the other end of the spectrum, everyone's grief and loss and complete change of lifestyle is going to be unique to them while having this common enemy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's some silver linings in this, because I know on the internet there's a lot of very heartwarming photos of young men sitting outside their father's window. He's in the aged care home. He's sitting outside on a deck chair, and they call each other and they speak that way. And they're still visiting. There was another one that I saw this morning where a lady was celebrating her 100th birthday, I think, but she was in isolation. So I better get good at saying that word. So their family was celebrating outside and she was inside, and they were all sort of behind a glass door. So, there's some silver linings in here, but at the same time, it is very heart-wrenching for every individual on the planet at the moment.
It is, yeah. And Greg, you mentioned, that people are going to have to take their own journeys. Well, speaking of journeys, one of Journey's songs, "Don't Stop Believing."
Yes, okay.
That was a very
am
long.
I meant to laugh at this?
That was a very long bow to draw. No, that's fine. You are welcome to laugh on this. So, one of the things that the federal government did this week was to allow the airline industry to not stop believing by way of a $715 million rescue package that will hopefully keep them afloat, despite, of course, not being boats, until they can restart their operations after the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic, in fact.
Now, an interesting comment on that. I read that Qantas have $2 billion in cash reserves. I would have thought they had more, right? And I'm sure someone can explain to me why they don't. However, they also said that they have $8 billion in bills over the next year. So $2 billion in cash reserves, $8 billion in bills, $750 million doesn't add up. And that's not even all for Qantas.
No, that's right. That's right. So this is the this is what all businesses do is they have a budget, and their budget is based on the money that they have in the bank, as well as the money that they are intending to or projecting that they will earn over the next while. What this does is it gives them a little bit of a buffer. So what Qantas have obviously done, and a number of the airlines, or I think actually most airlines have done exactly the same, is they have shut down their operations, which means that essentially the money that they were going to spend, so that $8 billion in bills, should have been reduced significantly, at least in the short term, so that they can, and of course the $715 million package is really about enabling them to no longer pay fuel excises and various other taxes that they pay as part of as part of a large business. So essentially, they're reducing. The government and the individual businesses themselves are reducing the amount of their expenses as much as they possibly can. And unfortunately, that has also involved, as we discussed, massive layoffs of staff. Who will not be paid for the foreseeable future.
No, and that idea of reducing the expenses. That's what they've done in Western Australia, isn't it? They haven't frozen people from being able to pay their electricity bills, but they've frozen any increase in the electricity bills. So you have a very predictable way of budgeting over the next, I think it was 12 months or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, so that it's not that you don't have to pay the bill, you just don't have to sort of pay as much.
Exactly. And look, I think we'll see state governments and probably a lot of local councils seeing what they're able to do in terms of reducing expenditure on things like rates, council rates, water bills, and in the case of state governments, potentially state utilities, etc. So we will just have to see how individual states are going to act, or rather react to the economic downturn here, because invariably there are a lot of people, and there was a lot of commentary this week about the types of workers who are losing their otherwise productive jobs. People like artists and musicians, huge numbers of hospitality workers. Obviously, we discussed airline workers. But there are so many different types of industries that have, by virtue of the fact that we all have to social distance now, and that people aren't going to pubs and clubs, they're not going to shows. Essentially, there is no industry for them to attend. So they're previously profitable enterprises are absolutely not at the moment.
No, and I forget who it was. It might have been Jack River recently spoke about how artists, I think she might have written an open letter or something to the government about how they're not bailing out artists. They're not bailing out, people in the creative industries.
And that's not so uncommon. Previous. This is not unique to the Liberal National Party, but previous Labor governments as well have not entirely appreciated the role of entertainers and the arts in general in broader society.
Alex Leahy, it was.
Oh wow, yeah,
not Jack River,
not Jack River. Yeah,
Alex Leahy. Yeah, she wrote an open letter to the government. Sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to make sure that I get my Australian music artists right. I don't want to get them mixed up.
Straight. Yeah, look, it's interesting times, and one thing that I do see a lot of economic commentators commentating on this week is the premise that future stimulus packages are going to likely have to target individuals in order to stimulate the economy. What I mean by that is the first stimulus package was about providing cash to individuals, to New Start people, New Start allowance people, to retirees and people on pension. Potentially, the next stimulus package is may need to put money in people's pockets or give money directly to businesses. And that may enable them to, retain staff or to potentially purchase things. As we discussed in last week's show, it's great to have a tax write-off, but you have to have security that, in 6 months' time, you're still going to be in business. So potentially by giving them money that they are able to spend, they may go out and make some purchases. So we will just have to see what the next little while brings, and we'll obviously keep the listenership up to date on as much as we possibly can what it means to you as these stimulus packages and economic downturn continues.
All right, so let's keep it financial. It seems to be where the conversations are going. The Parliamentary Budget Office has warned a growing percentage of government spending is becoming harder to scrutinise.
Yes.
Why?
Well, the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Office, which the PBO I think sounds a little bit like a Indian Pale Ale, IPA, like a limited edition IPA.
Yeah.
PBO.
It goes down smooth.
Yeah, extra wheat for your gut.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yes, look, the Parliamentary Budget Office has warned that a growing percentage of government spending is becoming very, very hard to scrutinise, because of the increased use of alternative financing arrangements for major projects, particularly infrastructure projects, rather than the traditional way of funding projects, which is to directly fund them out of the budget. So the PBO have said essentially that if this trend continues, the budget reporting practices to make the spending more transparent, then it will pose major risks to the Commonwealth Government's fiscal position over the long term. So to sort of give you a little bit of detail into what these alternative funding arrangements are, they often involve the government undertaking an equity investment, so essentially taking out shares in a particular company, rather than, or they might guarantor a loan, or they might take out a loan for a particular project, rather than funding those measures through direct payments or through taxation, etc., expenditure. And using defined budgets. So the report has pointed out that there is a very clear trend towards using these alternative financing arrangements, particularly in terms of transport, energy and telecommunications portfolios. And it's said that right now we're sitting at roughly 20% of the proportion of projects that are being undertaken use these, in the Commonwealth, use these different funding arrangements, compared with 5% prior to 2017 and 18. So they've essentially said that it can make a significant long-term benefit on the Commonwealth's fiscal position, particularly as it's associated with revaluations of the projects that they're putting in place. And one of the examples that they gave, the report said that equity investments by federal governments in NBN Co. Since the inception of the project had resulted in $20.8 billion deterioration in the Commonwealth balance sheet because of the way that they've gone about funding those projects. Dare I say, it is a little bit dodgy, because essentially it doesn't show on the balance sheet.
Everyone's doing it, Jake. Everyone's doing it. I don't know why this is exactly how I budget.
Budget entirely based on the
project. I have a big project. I take out a loan. No one knows about the loan.
Pay it back over time.
And then I just get workers to pay it back for me.
Exactly.
It's great. Yeah, works out well.
Yeah, so we'll just, frankly, we'll just have to see, because it is an interesting thing. As that figure of 20% increases, so does the liability placed on the Commonwealth Government to pay off these things. And certainly in the case of direct equity injections, the value of the companies that we are putting in equity within, be it NBN Co. Or an energy company, etc., they may be devalued over time. So they might be public they might be publicly listed companies. They may experience an economic downturn, such as the one that the rest of the world is experiencing right now. And as a consequence, such as with NBN Co., the company itself is being devalued. So does then the equity that the government has invested in them.
Well, it would be typical of them to go out of business before I even get the NBN here in the Blue Mountains.
I love it.
I have a story, Jake.
Yeah, I'd love a story.
Apparently, the Queensland Council polls are still going to go ahead. I don't know if this has changed. This is an article from the 16th of March.
Yeah.
And apparently you lot are meant to go to the polls on the 28th of March.
Yes, next week.
Is it still going ahead as far as you know?
Well, as of recording today, as far as I'm aware, yes. But I'm one of those silly buggers who saw the fact that the COVID-19 virus was going to make some impact on social distancing over the course of the next few weeks, and registered for postal voting.
Okay.
So that's now you can no longer do that. That was that you had to register for that last Monday, which I think was the 16th of March.
Yeah.
So it's now
Yes,
too
you're
late.
right, by 7 p.m.
Exactly. So now it's too late to register for a postal vote, but you can certainly do things like you can do an early vote at early
Send a
voting
pigeon.
locations. But they have said the council's the electoral what are they called? ECQ? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they've said
The ECQ.
they've said
I don't know.
they've said what is it called? It's just the
electoral.
electoral.
Is it
something.
the electoral? Yeah. The ECQ.
ECQ. Anyway, they've
The
said
Queensland Electoral Commission,
That's
the
it.
QEC.
there we
Yeah.
go. We got there eventually. So they have said bring your own pencil with you. So don't share pencils.
So there's no democracy sausage and you have to bring your own pencil.
Yeah, it's very sad because I always look forward to not so much my democracy sausage, but generally my local place that I go to vote has it coincides with the local markets, and
Yeah.
they have gluten-free donuts there, and I like to get a gluten-free democracy donut.
Well, our philosophy at the moment is to our kids anyway is that if you can name it, it's been cancelled. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, look, they've come up with some creative ways for those markets and stuff. Though I know that a lot of the people here in the Blue Mountains are actually selling things online rather than just sort of getting together on a market. It's almost like a virtual market. They'll come, you just name your price. You can, well, you don't name your price. You commit to the asking price, and then they will just drop it off to you. So hopefully that happens for you as well.
Yeah.
And they could do that for voting. Why not?
They could, but I like
You just
fresh
leave your
donuts.
vote outside under your doormat.
I like fresh donuts, Greg. I don't like donuts that were cooked 2 hours ago. I like them straight out of the fryer.
I liked, well, yeah, that I can understand. I think we should get back all social gatherings just so that we can have fresh donuts.
Yeah, democracy donuts.
Yeah, or classify them as an essential service.
Yeah. I love it.
So elections still going ahead. Very interesting. Bring your own pencil.
And donut.
Mr. Vidgen did say that he's the head of the Queensland Electoral Commission, the QEC, as we stated so eloquently earlier.
Yeah.
He did say that this is a unique and evolving situation, and we will update voters if circumstances change. And so will we, Jake. Because
certainly
that's what
will.
we do.
Well,
Gosh darn it.
We're going to be in quarantine soon, so we figure we'll probably go to a daily show.
Yeah, absolutely. Daily show. Just talk about what we ate, what we did. Yes, for sure.
Speaking
for sure.
of which, Greg, what did you have for breakfast today?
I had eggs.
Fantastic. I had granola.
Jake, this week, while we are snug as a bug, as a rug. No, while we're snug as a bug in a rug. I have to get my prepositions right. We're all about the prepositions here. I'm curious about Jaquie Lambie. She's cropped up a bit. She's an easy target. Obviously, she comes out with some pretty controversial stuff. I know during the what was it? The vote on gay marriage here in Australia, she was pretty adamant about voting no. Since then, I haven't really paid that much attention to her, but she does, but every now and again, and get ready to have your feathers ruffled, every now and again, I hear something that she says and it piques my interest, and I think, you know what, that's kind of good that someone's saying that. And she's quite passionate about what she does. So I'm curious to know a little bit of background about Jaquie Lambie and how she's ended up as a household name to 4 households in Australia.
I dare say she's very prominent. She's always been a vociferous person, very passionate about.
What does that mean?
Vociferous, vocal, passionate about the things that she speaks about. Classic. But
like my favorite band is Tool, and they have a song, and they have the word somniferous, I think it is. So I don't know what that is, but I don't know about this vociferous.
Vociferous, yes. Well,
Vociferous.
she's certainly
How do you
that.
spell it?
Whatever that is, that's the.
Yeah.
But she's definitely it. But so the Australian politician Jaquie Lambie, she is the leader and founder and only member of the Jaquie Lambie network. She served as a senator for Tasmania from 2014 to 2017 and again from 2019 until today. And probably for a little bit longer, considering she's a senator. She gets a 6-year term.
Nice.
So she joined the Australian Army in 1989. She served 10 years and achieved the rank of corporal.
That's interesting.
It is. Yeah, she's an interesting person.
You judge these people and you don't know that they've spent 10 years in the Australian Army.
Exactly. So, and actually towards the end of, towards the conclusion of her military service, she sustained a back injury during a field exercise, and that resulted in long-term pain in her spine. And she began, once she discharged from the military, she received a military pension from the Department of Veterans Affairs, which will become important a little bit further on down the track. I'm not just reading from her biography.
I'm writing it down.
But so she was first elected. So this is where it gets interesting, and this is how she first became a household name. She was first elected as a member of the Palmer United Party in 2013 and became immediately popular for her vociferous parliamentary behaviour, championing issues concerning foreign affairs, veterans affairs, youth unemployment, and indeed the criticism of Islam. So after 4 months of persistent internal divisions within the Palmer United Party, she left. She resigned from the party and became an independent before forming her own party. In 2015, and around May, she formed... Oh, I just said that.
Yeah, well, that's what it was called. It's called the Jaquie Lambie Network.
Yes,
is that the one?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the one.
The one where she's the member.
And yes. And the leader.
Yes.
What do you think about this, Jaquie? I think
cleaner.
Jaquie. Exactly. But in November 2017, she was revealed to hold a Australian-British dual citizenship. And the dreaded Section 44. As
such
part
a good
of
section.
that goddamn Section 44.
It's such a good section.
It's just or bad depending on your depending on your position. It's such an interesting thing. I couldn't care less whether somebody holds dual citizenship. Frankly, I would.
You're on Australia.
Well,
that's the problem.
I think I would prefer that we get the best person for the job rather than someone who might have been born in another country and hasn't yet gotten around to denouncing their citizenship. But furthermore, who cares? Once they finish their political career, they can bugger off home to wherever they were born if they want. It's complete. I just don't mind. It's not a big deal.
Please don't take that quote out of context, listeners.
Yes, I'm not suggesting that they should bugger off home. I'm just saying that they could if they wanted to. I didn't like them. No, I'm just kidding.
I just imagine like someone saying, "Oh, you should check this Couch the podcast out. It's
bugger
great."
Off home.
And then they turn it on, and then it's just Jake going, "Hey, you just bugger off."
Yeah, that's the grab. That's the noise grab. So she resigned in November 2017 because of that. She was re-elected to the Senate in 2019 in the 2019 federal election in May. So during her tenure, she has held some controversial positions and, interestingly enough, a couple of progressive ones as well. On the controversial side, in 2014, she expressed her belief that China could invade Australia. I've got a lovely little quote here. Quote, "If anyone thinks that we should have a national security and defence policy which ignores the threat of a Chinese communist invasion, you're delusional and got rocks in your head. The communist Chinese military capacity and level of threat to the Western world democracies is at an unprecedented and historical high," she said. In 2016, she called for a preemptive pardon for any defence personnel accused of war crimes against the Taliban or Islamic State, which is maybe a little bit topical given the news that came out this week of a service personnel from the Australian Special Services shooting an unarmed Afghan person. In 2017, she said Australia should follow Donald Trump's lead in his order to restrict entry of citizens of certain Muslim majority countries to the USA. And a couple of the more progressive, I suppose, policies that are worth noting. She's consistently campaigned for military veterans, particularly on the subjects of mental health and on medical care. She, as we discussed earlier, had experienced significant health issues herself after she was injured. She injured her back, as we said, in a exercise while she was in the military, and following her discharging from the military, she experienced, she said, around 3 years of awful depression and other mental health issues. So she has been vociferous in campaigning for
She's a vociferous camper.
Yeah. No, in campaigning for better care and access to medical and mental health services for veterans.
Now she hates. You've got here that she hates hobbyists.
No, it's lobbyists.
Oh, sorry, lobbyists.
Yeah,
I can't. They're okay. Hobbyists.
They can be. It just depends on the hobby,
stores
right?
that bother me.
Yes, the hobby mart. Yeah, they're the worst. No, I'm just kidding. I love. I can't remember their name. Hobby something. But
I don't know.
I used to buy. I'm a prolific plastic model maker of model planes, Greg.
Here we go.
In my late childhood, in my late teens, sorry.
Yeah.
I used to make. In the end, you couldn't stop me.
It's completely normal.
It's
completely normal behaviour.
Yeah.
And you should not feel ashamed about it.
Yeah, exactly. But she does in fact hate lobbyists. She even says, explicitly so on her website. She's recently campaigned for political donation and campaign finance reform. And her website says, quote, "I've got a bill that will tighten the laws on how political donations will be disclosed to the Australian public. If my proposal becomes law, it'll be the biggest shake-up in donations disclosures in decades. It'll fix our donations laws so that you'll have to disclose your donations if you give over $2,500 in a 6-month period and discloses it in real time." Real shake-up.
That doesn't sound like a bad idea.
No, it sounds like a tremendous idea.
Yeah, I think it's just from an information perspective. Not necessarily, this is not a political bent. I mean, I've got one, but this is not it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just a good idea to have that information.
Yeah, look,
why not?
I completely agree. I mean, I think they're given the most recent, I think it was a YouGov poll that said that trust in politicians is at an all-time low, and there was a correlation there with the essentially the ability of lobbyists and financiers to fund political parties and by way of those donations get some form of quid pro quo in response. The fact that we do have a little bit of a pay-to-play system, if you like, of government has led, I think, the broader Australian public to question significantly the impact of campaign donations, particularly from corporations. So I think it's on brand for Jaquie Lambie, but I also personally I think it's good strategy to align with what the Australian public wants.
And her website's great.
Yeah, it's very yellow.
Her website's
very
just
yellow.
a bit of fun,
Exactly.
Like you just get there and it's just like, "Hey, mate, will you advise me on the cash ban bill?" And you have to click on a little thing which says, "I'll tell you what I think." And it's got a very vociferous picture of
You're using that
Jaquie
wrong.
I think, where is she? Yeah. Sorry, somniferous, which actually
Glowing.
means sleepy, by the way, not glowing.
There you go.
Yeah, sleepy.
Oh,
Anyway.
SOMB?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, just SOM.
SOM, okay. There you go.
Yeah, SOMN. It's one of those words.
Yeah.
It's got a picture of her. I think it must be in Parliament House, I presume. It's all smoky and there's cameras on her. It's all very serious. But yeah, it's a bit of fun. And she's just got like, I hate lobbyists.
She does.
And she wants you to give her money. And she's got this funny amount here. It goes up like $10 and then it goes to $27.
Wow. That's very specific.
It goes $50, $100, and then $270.
That's certainly a multiple of 27.
Is that like just because if you were going to donate 25, maybe she can just get like another $2 out of you or something?
It could be.
I'm tempted just to do. I'm going to do it.
The way that I reckon she's done it is she's probably looked at the most common donations that have been made in the past,
like
and
an average,
an average of those dollar amounts, and has structured the donations based on that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she got like this influx of people who are like, I'm going to donate 25. You know what? I'm going to show my solidarity with Jaquie Lambie and put $27.
Yes, the extra $2 is for her lisp. Fix it, love.
Jake, thank you for that. That was good. That was good information. I feel more up to date now about Jaquie Lambie.
Me too.
I hope one day she gets more up to date on us, Jake.
Yes.
And
Yes,
speaking
absolutely.
of being up to date, how can our listeners stay up to date with us?
I'm so glad you asked, Greg. Well, they can hit the subscribe button and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching for The Pouch, the podcast, and hopefully giving us a bit of a rating.
Yes, and thank you to those people who have given us a rating this week. And speaking about The Pouch, the podcast, if you want to send your friends, families, foes, loved ones, pets, well, I don't know. You're going to have to send them via social distancing, obviously. If you want them to keep their social distancing, get them to go to thepouchthepodcast.com, where they can choose their favorite podcast player of choice.
If you don't
and
want
listen to us.
If you don't want to complete your social distancing requirements, I'd suggest that you personally go and steal their phones and subscribe them.
Yes, that's right. We're doing a campaign on that. Steal your friend's phone and get them to subscribe. Just force
Steal
it
your
into their
friend's
lives.
phone and spread the virus.
Don't spread the virus.
Socially responsible.
We've already got a couple of quotes in this episode, Jake. So let's not go with the motto of spread the virus. Jake, thank you so much for chatting to me this week.
No, thank you, and thank you to our listeners.
Hello, and welcome to The Pouch. Oh, I forgot to actually put in a joke. So the insert joke here of podcasts.
The straight boomerang.
Oh, I love it. No, perfect. That's it. Just go with whatever came into your head then, Jake, because that's just perfect. The straight boomerang. All right. I love it. I love it. Again, sounds like it should be racist, but it's not. That's our angle for the day.
Yeah.